Libya was an interesting country to live in. The history of Libya is phenomenal. First of all, there were tribal peoples there, and then in about 500 BC, when many Greeks were leaving the Greek area in Greece to colonize various areas around the Mediterranean, one of the choice spots was Libya. So you have all kinds of ancient cities along the coast, including Cyrene, which is mentioned in the Bible. The guy that carried Christ's cross was from Cyrene. And actually, one of the pharaohs of Egypt was a Libyan prince who became pharaoh. So we have some historic aspects to Libya that are kind of interesting. But when the Greek influence and the Mediterranean influence fell to the Romans, probably around 146 BC, I guess it'd be a typical date, then the Romans took over. So first you had Greek ruins everywhere. Then the Romans moved in, and they took over the Greek cities and actually covered a lot of the artwork of the Greeks, and like mosaics in public buildings. They covered those mosaics up that had a Greek design, geometric, and then they put down their own mosaics that were more of a Roman style. So there's a lot to see. In fact, there are all these ancient cities all along the coast, from Alexandria in Egypt all the way over into Tunisia. Just everywhere you went, there were these ancient Greek cities. And the interesting part was nobody's there. So you could do your own exploring. But I remember one day, a German couple, an elderly man, and I believe it was his daughter, a professor of classics from Germany, was visiting one of our engineers, a German man. And they wanted to visit some of these sites and asked if I'd like to go along. So I did. And we went to a particular ancient Greek Roman city that was pretty well preserved. And the interesting part of this was it was fun sitting in an amphitheater where this professor, this German professor, gave an oration of Cicero, and he did it in Latin. Well, I had Latin in high school, but I didn't remember too much. But it was actually rather interesting to hear him using spoken Latin with one of Cicero's orations. It kind of gave you a feel for what it must have been like living back in those days and to be in an amphitheater with other people. There was a lot to see. It was really stimulating. We worked 3 weeks in the desert, had a week off. And most of those weeks were spent just exploring those Greek and Roman ruins that were everywhere along the coast. Really a great time. So when we travel, what should we expect? Well, I think number one, to learn something. Number two, to gain an historic perspective about things of the past and how the past influences the present. To me, it was interesting to engage in some of those ruins and think of, well, what influence have the Greeks and the Romans had on Western thought? Amazingly much. So those kinds of experiences were helpful to help me kind of gain a perspective on who I was and what I hoped to be. Thank you.